The Guelph Chamber is having important dialogues with key policymakers who influence our business climate. We know that now more than ever, we must elevate our efforts as an organization and as a network of businesses so that we not only help our members survive, but in fact thrive out of the pandemic. With the generous support of CN Rail, we plan to share a handful of interviews with elected officials and key decision makers over the coming weeks, asking them to discuss important issues in their portfolios and reminding them it's no longer sufficient to have us only managed and consulted as stakeholders, but instead work with us as contributing partners in their efforts in our aims to foster inclusive economic prosperity. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Carolyn Mulroney, Minister of Transportation and Minister of Francophone Affairs. Thank you, Minister, for joining us today. People might recall, of course, that you're the daughter of a Prime Minister, you're a wife and mother, you're also a successful businesswoman and lawyer. Your experiences are quite significant and inspiring. And then, of course, in 2018, you decide to run for the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party leadership. And now, of course, you're the Minister of Transportation and Minister of Francophone Affairs. I'm curious to know, how did you decide to enter politics?
Well, as you mentioned, growing up, there was a lot of politics in my life and a lot of political conversation at our dinner table. And, I met a tremendous number of people while I was living in Ottawa, people that I saw doing great things, including my parents, but so many people that were drawn to public life because they wanted to make their community, their province, their country better. And I had tremendous admiration for the people that I met when my dad was Prime Minister and when we lived in Ottawa. And so I think that's when I began to recognize that politicians were trying to make change in their communities and in our country. So I had a different version of politicians than a lot of people do. So in the back of my mind, that's what I always felt. I was inspired. And some say, well, why would you've seen the underbelly of politics, you've seen the difficult part of politics, and you have a young family at home. But I actually thought that I've seen both sides to it, and so I had a good sense of what to expect. And with a young family at home, I thought that was the perfect reason to get involved in politics. I have 4 children, and I really wanted to get involved to secure a better future for them here in Ontario. So, as you pointed out, I'm Minister of Francophone Affairs, Minister of Transportation, and MPP for York Simcoe, and it's just such a great honor to be able to serve in these roles.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. And you must know, of course, that you're an inspiration for many young women who aren't sure if this is a path they can pursue as well. So thank you for all that you do. Now, we both know, of course, that the COVID-19 pandemic has forced everyone to be working differently, more strategically and innovatively. How do you believe governments have had to and continue to elevate their efforts?
Well, so much has changed in the last year. COVID-19 really represents the biggest threat to our health and our economy that we've ever faced. We faced in our lifetime. It was clear early on, given how great the threat was and the implications for the health and safety of our people, but also the health of our economy, that we needed to be nimble. And I'm sure because you represent so many businesses, nimble isn't the word that comes to mind when people think about government, but we really did need to be flexible and take action that was swift and innovative as we were pushing forward and trying to develop policy responses to the crisis. And so I think from the feedback that I've gotten from people since the beginning of the crisis, I think that people would say that under Premier Ford's leadership, that we have taken decisive action, not only to protect the health and safety, but on the transportation side of things, we needed to make sure that we were keeping goods moving and that we could ensure that our frontline workers were able to continue to get to and from work. So we did a lot of things that I would put in the innovative and flexible category. We supported safe transit operations by developing guidance, by providing funding and enhanced cleaning measures. And the funding was substantial. We concluded a historic partnership with the federal government to provide up to $2 billion in support for municipal transit services that really saw the underlying economics of transit shift over the past year. So that support I know was necessary, and we continue to work closely with Opta and public transit agencies across the province to make sure that the support that we're giving responds to their needs. We also, from the get-go, we're working closely with trucking stakeholders to make sure that we were supporting Ontario's truck drivers. And so we did so by keeping en route facilities open and adding temporary facilities and enacting some very important regulatory measures that were required for them. So, we responded. That was one of the biggest threats early on, because people were responding people were responding out of fear because they didn't understand what the virus could do, and they were fearful that by opening their shipping and receiving facilities to truck drivers, that they were putting themselves at risk. And so we had to take action to support our truck drivers, and we continue to do that even today. We did some other things, like we extended expiry dates of key driver and vehicle products and services so people could stay home and not risk in-person visits by going to their Service Ontario locations. And I can tell you that we established, I can't even count how many committees and working groups with different parts of the transportation sector, all of these different sectors within the transportation sector of Ontario, to make sure that we are addressing their concerns and finding ways to support them. So I would say that in the last almost 12 months that I saw something that I didn't think was possible, which was government really being nimble and flexible, which is what the pandemic required of us.
That's excellent, thank you. And I hope you can continue to keep in mind the kind of unusual suspects as partners in the ways that you deliberate and create programs and opportunities, such as those in the chamber networks. The business community as well, very keen to be at the table with government moving forward.
Yeah, and I'll add that you're absolutely right. Working closely with chambers of commerce, BIAs, representatives of the business community was key to the work that we were doing in terms of developing responses. The Minister of Finance convened the Ontario Jobs and Recovery Committee, which we would each minister would come with reports of what was going on in their different sectors, and then the measures that we were proposing were vetted, and we would have people from the business community come and present so that we could really get a sense of what was going on. Myself, I had a ministerial advisory committee that had representatives from different sectors of transportation, but also from different business sectors as well, to advise me on what kinds of things we should be focused on in the short term, and then also in the medium and long term as we start planning for the eventual reopening and recovery of the economy.
Excellent, yes, thanks. So speaking of your specific efforts, could you briefly provide an overview for our members of the transportation portfolio and your current key priorities?
Absolutely. Well, the transportation portfolio is a big one. It's a key driver of Ontario's economy, and but at its core, it's really just about connecting communities and people to the places that they want to go. And so that's really what I focus on. I have a colleague that I work closely with, the Associate Minister of Transportation, Kinga Surma, and the two of us are really focused on just that, how we can ensure that we're connecting communities and people. And, one of the challenges that we focus on is the fact that Ontario's population is set to grow significantly over the next few decades. And so we want to plan accordingly. We want to make up for the transit and transportation deficits that exist in different parts of the province. And we want to think creatively about what Ontario's transportation network should look like. And that's where actually some of the conversations that I had with the members of the Ministerial Advisory Council were incredibly informative, because we also got to think sort of long term about what our network should be looking like in 10, 20 years from now. As you know, we've made significant investments and will be making significant investments in transportation infrastructure, roads and bridges, highways and transit. And we're also committed to delivering these projects differently, faster, better. Last year, I introduced two pieces of legislation, and they passed: the Building Transit Faster Act and the Ontario Rebuilding and Recovery Act. And both of those pieces of legislation introduce new measures to accelerate the delivery of transportation and transit infrastructure in Ontario. I always hear from people that, yes, they like the plans that we have, but they don't believe that we're ever going to deliver them. And one of the impediments to the delivery is the red tape that exists, the duplication, and those delays, that red tape adds cost into the system, which adds risk to some of the projects. So it was really critical to us. Our government has laid out very ambitious transportation infrastructure projects for the next few years. And in order to be able to deliver those, we needed to also bring along the corresponding measures that would allow us to deliver them in a time frame that kept costs low, and also just allowed people to know that we do mean it. We are going to build these. We are going to build these subway lines. We are going to build these LRTs. We are going to build these roads and bridges. But government has to get out of its way and make sure that these projects can get built. So that's been a big part of the work that I've done, especially in the last year.
Excellent. And of course, those delays, like you said, certainly can hinder our competitiveness as a region and as a province. So that's good to hear. If you don't mind, I'd like to get into just a couple of key infrastructure pieces under your portfolio that certainly affect the Guelph community and our membership. So for example, a new 4-lane Highway 7 between Guelph and Kitchener has been long promised. In 2015, there was some preliminary preparation work done, including an overpass and environmental assessment work was done. The project was shut down in 2018 for some review. And then last July, the province confirmed that the project would be moving forward with phase 3 of construction. I'm wondering if you could provide us an update on where that currently stands and what stage you are in the procurement process, and if you have any projected dates of completion.
I'd be very happy to provide an update. So as you said, the new Highway 7 will connect Kitchener, Waterloo, and Guelph's fast-growing urban centers, and will help relieve congestion on the very heavily traveled Highway 401. So we know how important this essential project is for local residents, and we are continuing to make very good progress on it. The project will include 18 kilometers of a 4-lane freeway and a new crossing over the Grand River. And it will create, as the Chamber is well aware and has been advocating for, good local jobs and drive economic growth while improving safety and reducing commute times. So in June of 2019, phase 1 of the new Highway 7 was completed with the construction of the replacement bridge on Victoria Street in Kitchener. We're continuing to refine our plans for phase 2 and phase 3 of the new Highway 7. Environmental fieldwork, detailed soil and foundation investigations, and other engineering work are all currently underway. And actually, just very recently, we received Treasury Board approval to move forward with 3 advanced projects as part of phase 3 of this project. So we'll have more good news to share on those exciting projects very soon.
Okay, that's excellent news. Thank you. And so let's flip away from Highway 7 and go to 6. In May of 2020, the Morriston Bypass Coalition, of which we are a part of, sent a letter to you and the Premier regarding the need to proceed with the long-delayed Morriston Bypass. This was identified in your government's Connecting the Southwest Transportation Plan. Wondering if you have any updates specifically on that project.
Well, absolutely. As you know, this section of Highway 6 through Morriston is one of the busiest 2-lane highways in the entire province. Traffic volumes along Highway 6 through Morriston have been at capacity since 1995. And that's actually, I think, when the Speaker, Ted Arnott, was elected, and he's also a strong advocate for this project. So congestion is high. Average daily traffic volumes along the corridor see about 23,000 vehicles per day, which further contributes to traffic congestion. So last July, we announced our commitment to moving forward with plans to expand Highways 6 and 401 from Hamilton to Guelph, which includes widening Highway 401 from 6 to 10 lanes, including 2 managed lanes between Highway 6 North and Highway 6 South, constructing 2 new interchanges and improvements to existing interchanges, and a new 5-kilometer multi-lane divided highway bypassing the community of Morriston. The new alignment of Highway 6, I know will provide improved connections to Highway 401 and the Hanlon Expressway, and will therefore alleviate congestion in the community of Morriston. So currently, we've retained a design consultant who will review and update the EA, the environmental assessment study, and then we'll advance to the next phase of design. Also, the environmental field investigations, consultation with Indigenous communities, and of course, property acquisition for the project are all required, and those elements of the project are underway. So we've got archaeological fieldwork near the future mid-block interchange on the Hanlon Expressway that began and is expected to be completed this spring, and also an advanced contract for the replacement of the Puslinch Concession Road 7 bridge, which was completed last summer. So we're making significant progress on all of these elements, and you know, but I can say, as you mentioned, advancing work on Highway 6 Morriston bypass expansion on that project is really a priority for our government, and we believe it was important before, but as a result of the pandemic, it's even more important because it will help contribute to our recovery from the pandemic.
Absolutely, and the coalition will certainly be pleased to hear about that progress. Thanks. So let's just move on to some continued concerns. And you mentioned some of the expansions happening over the 400 series highways, specifically across GTA West. And these concerns don't only come from concerned citizens or activists, but most recently, as you know, the York Regional Council, the Mississauga councils have voted to oppose it. I'm wondering if you can comment on the issue and what you think the right course of action should be.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm happy to comment on it. The fact is that by 2051, the population of the Greater Golden Horseshoe is expected to grow to almost 15 million people. That's 1 million new residents every 5 years. And if you travel the 401 and the GTA, you will not be surprised to know that it is the busiest highway in North America. So we need our roads infrastructure to keep up with the pace of demographic growth, and to address the congestion that we're already experiencing. Congestion, and your chamber would know this, costs the GTA in a significant way, $11 billion in productivity each year, especially along Highway 401. So we know the Greater Golden Horseshoe is an economic driver for the province, and addressing our transportation needs in this region is fundamental to our economy's competitiveness. And that means investing in public transit and also in highways, so that people have safe and convenient options for getting around, and so that our goods can make it to market in an efficient way. So I've spoken a little about the guiding philosophy behind our significant infrastructure investments in transportation. You know, this vision is why we're moving forward with the preferred route for a new 400 series highway and transit corridor across York, Peel, and Halton regions, which is the GTA West corridor. We know that it will reduce travel times for drivers, and it will support economic growth and job creation. And we've heard from local governments and municipalities who want this highway built. I know you referenced that there's been some growing opposition to the project. As a member of provincial parliament from York region, I know that there's also significant support for this, as well as in York region, but as well as in Peel and across the GTA. And you know, nobody likes being stuck in slow-moving traffic, and so without more transportation infrastructure, people will be stuck for even longer periods of time. MTO's traffic modeling data shows that by the year 2041, the level of congestion in the Greater Golden Horseshoe would be about double what it is today. So drivers that travel the entire GTA West Highway between, I'll give you an example, Highway 401 at Trafalgar Road Interchange and Highway 400 at King Road Interchange during rush hours, which is a distance of approximately 56 kilometers. Those drivers will save about 30 minutes when compared to the time it would take if they used highways 401 or 400. So that means less rush in the morning to work and less rush at the end of the day to get home in time for dinner. From an economic standpoint, building transportation infrastructure is critical to our economy. especially in light of the pandemic and the fiscal impacts that COVID-19 has had. This project alone will create thousands of jobs and generate up to $350 million in real GDP during construction. So we're planning for this highway. Our plans will be in line with the Greenbelt Plan, which was published in 2017. We will do everything to minimize impacts to the Greenbelt while recognizing the need for smart infrastructure development. And let me be clear, strong environmental oversight will always be maintained as our transportation projects move forward. And finally, I'll just add that there is a third round of public consultations that is planned and will be held in the near future so that we can receive further feedback on the preliminary design of the preferred route for the GTA West.
Great, thank you for giving such real-time update on this project of concern, but also there is opportunity in it as well. So it's good to hear there's additional opportunity to be consulted on it, and I'm sure the community will contribute to that. You mentioned, of course, the movement of people and the congestion, and so I'd be remiss not to get into the two-way all-day go. We know the benefits of a connected innovation corridor for students, for the ever-changing workforce, for job creation and more. And you've been hearing about two-way all-day go, not only from us, the Guelph Chamber, but of course our partners in the Connect the Corridor Coalition, of which we're a part of. And we've been quite appreciative of the ability to be working with you so meaningfully on that project. Quite encouraged, of course, by the recent announcement regarding the completion of the major $100 million plus project in preparation for this project. There is, of course, as you know, still lots to be done, and not everything has been funded to date. So I'm wondering if you could provide some additional insight about this project, what's to come, and how we can ensure it continues to move forward quickly.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, though, I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber for your involvement in the Connect the Corridor group. As a newly appointed Minister of Transportation, I met with the group early on in my tenure, and it was an innovative approach to transportation planning, and one that I believe benefited me personally, my office, as well as the ministry, to get that kind of real-time feedback on some of our planning work and hear from groups along the corridor about what they needed to see and when. And so I want to thank you and let you know that initiatives such as Connect the Corridor really do have an impact on policymaking. And from my perspective, I think it's benefiting the project overall in a real way. So you would know from the work that you've done with us that we are committed to improving GO Rail service between Kitchener and Toronto. And I know that it is a priority for Guelph residents and businesses and all the communities along the line. And so that's why we are moving forward through Metrolinx to expedite our plans to bring two-way all-day go service to the Kitchener corridor. A key section of the Kitchener corridor between Bramalea and Georgetown is owned and used by CN Rail. So we are continuing to work with our partners to find smarter and better ways to coexist, to operate our services, and to do so in parallel with them to accelerate the delivery of the new services that our communities along the line want to see. Although we've been dealing with the pandemic, our work is still moving forward on this. We've made improvements to sections of the corridor we do own to improve journey times and to prepare for two-way all-day go. So a couple of examples is we have leveled crossings. We made level crossing and signal improvements. We've done extensive repairs and improvements of the rail corridor between Georgetown and Kitchener. And we've done the rehabilitation of the Speed River Rail Bridge in Guelph. We're getting ready to start that. And the work there is expected to begin soon in the spring of 2021. So Metrolinx is continuing to prepare for the future and work on delivery of new services is underway. We are still working to monitor and adapt as necessary, and we will add service incrementally as we complete the required infrastructure updates and repairs, and as we continue to engage with municipalities and communities throughout the process. The PDBC, the preliminary design business case, will be the next step in Metrolinx's business case life cycle. And so I look forward, once that's ready, to be able to provide more details very soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We look forward to continuing to work with you on this important infrastructure piece. And related to this, you would have, of course, seen that the Toronto Region Board of Trade issued a proposal around integrating transit networks, including municipal transit agencies, GO Transit, while of course recognizing that there's a need for local control. As you focus on building additional capacity with projects like Two-Way All Day Go, how does fare and service integration fit into the equation, in your opinion?
Well, back in August, as part of the Safe Restart Agreement, which provided up to $2 billion, as I said, in dedicated support for transit agencies, we also asked municipalities to participate in discussions with us on how to advance fare and service integration. We believe that this is the kind of work that's critical to our economic recovery. But also we saw through the pandemic that the underlying economics of transit have changed, and we know how essential transit is. So we want to make sure that it's sustainable. And we believe that a coordinated approach to fare policies and service integration will allow municipal transit systems to improve service for riders, making life easier for riders. And I think we can do it in a way that allows those systems to still maintain their autonomy. So we are working very closely on a plan to move closer to fare and service integration, because we know that a few minutes saved by a transit user each day can translate to millions of minutes across the whole system daily. And it will help assure the sustainability of transit by making it such an attractive travel option. So we are working on that. The approach that we've taken is my colleague, the Associate Minister of Transportation, Kinga Surma, recently kicked off our ministry's fare and service integration provincial municipal table. And so it's at this table that we have senior representatives from transit systems of the GTHA and in GO service areas who are all coming together to talk about this important topic. The table, which Minister Surma is chairing, will develop recommendations, guiding principles, and other considerations for fare and service integration across the region. Because I think one thing we know for sure is that the status quo isn't good enough. There's disparity in transit fares and services throughout the GTHA that present barriers for thousands of people who are looking to access employment and services. And those barriers are magnified when crossing municipal boundaries with punitive double fares and uncoordinated routes and schedules. And so we want to make sure that we are taking this time, looking ahead to the future, and doing what we can all together in partnership to make transit a more appealing option.
Thanks for that. And I know Associate Minister Surma is, I believe, Guelph alumna, and so hopefully we can continue to also work with her and her efforts in doing just that. So Minister, I want to thank you for your time and insights today. Again, please do continue to consider the Guelph Chamber, our network of skilled businesses and organizations, myself as partners in your work. I hope to continue to meaningfully work alongside you and your team. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Shakiba. Nice to be with you today.
Thank you.